Welcome, my friend, to one more listening practice. And today I will be talking about my trip to Mexico in 2014. That means that you will practice travel vocabulary when you're sightseeing and doing tourist stuff. And as well, you will also be able to practice the past tense. Now, let me remind you about something very important. Our listening practice is a space where you are supposed to pay attention to the language that I use and not necessarily to the information that I say. So, although I will be speaking about my trip to Mexico, that doesn't mean that you need to memorize or you need to pay attention specifically to the things that I did in Mexico, because for this exercise, that is completely useless. I'm just gathering one special topic and one specific topic for you to be able to pay attention to the type of language and the words that I use. Structures, verbs, time tenses, expressions, and so on. All right, so let's get it on. So, my trip to Mexico was made in 2014. And why did I choose Mexico as a destination? I chose Mexico as a destination because for some time my brother used to live there. He used to live in a city called Cuernavaca, and he went to live there to finish off, or he went for some type of studies or academic thing. So he was staying in Cuernavaca and he lived over there for at least 2 years. During that stay, I said this is the perfect chance to go to another country, and this actually was my first trip to an international place. So it was my first trip abroad, my first foreign trip. And when I decided to go to Mexico, I started looking first of all to low cost airlines, specifically to the one that my brother told me that was a cheap one in relation to the tickets or the plane tickets that we would buy from Colombia to Mexico. I would fly from Bogota to Mexico City directly. And the one that he told me about was JetBlue. JetBlue it's I think it's a Mexican, I think it's a Mexican airline, in fact. I'm not sure. But well, when I chose it, one of the first things that I saw during the flight was that I didn't want to have any layovers and any airport changes nor anything like that. So whenever I was looking for the ticket, I found a straight flight from Bogota to Mexico City, and this was with the company, specifically JetBlue. Then other thing that I would take care of was the schedule. The schedule that I would arrive in Mexico so that my brother would be able to be there and pick me up, because I was not sure. Well, I was arriving to a completely new country, and although I knew the language, it's a very well unknown place. So I remember that I would arrive at night to Mexico City, but my brother had already arranged to pick me up in that airport. So during the flight, I'm gonna jump off a little bit. Oh, well, first of all, I'm gonna jump off to the part when I was in the airport. And I went to the check-in counter, and I was getting kind of nervous in that specific part because it was my first international trip. So I was like, wow, what's gonna happen? International counter. Okay, then I went to the customs office. The same thing. You get kind of nervous. And although I knew that I wasn't gonna have any language change nor anything, my body started feeling this sensation of like, ooh, what's going on? I went through the duty free and I grabbed some snacks and some things for my brother. I would take him some beverages, and well, we headed off to Mexico. When we headed off to Mexico, in the flight, we had onboard snacks. And it was quite good because we had like kind of a dinner. This was before the pandemic. Remember, I'm talking about 2014. So we had kind of a dinner, and it was not bad at all. It was actually one of the best meals that I've had in any of the flights. And they offered alcoholic beverages during the flight, and it's something that I had never seen, and they were very kind actually. So it was quite of an interesting experience even discussing about or even thinking that it is a low-cost airline. But anyway, we went, when I arrived there, I knew the language, and I arrived to customs, and I was already facing for the first time in my life a person in an airport that I didn't know, or an airport that I had never been to. So I was like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? Is it okay? Am I doing the things correctly or not? And so it's kind of funny, but all this went on without any type of problem. I went to the waiting room to grab my bags. After, I went out from the international arrivals terminal. So I went out of the terminal, and my brother was there waiting for me, just waiting to greet me. I hadn't seen him in a long time, so it was quite interesting. All right, so this is the time when I arrived to the country. In fact, I arrived to Mexico City. Now I'm going to tell you something. There, before I continue the story, remember, our whole listening practice is for you to pay attention to the structures, verbs, time tenses that I use. Don't pay attention to the information that I'm talking about. The information is useless in this exercise. You don't need to understand about my trip to Mexico. You just need to understand the words that I'm using to practice your listening skills, how the language sounds, which is very interesting. So, all right. After that, we decided to stay in Mexico City. And we stayed in Mexico City, and we went and traveled to some specific touristic places. But we would not stay in a hotel. We were gonna stay in one of my cousin's apartments. She lives there for a long time, and she kindly received us. So when we got there, she already had planned this touristic journey along the city of Mexico, which is quite interesting. Let me see. I have a question here. My friend, have you ever heard of the Vergara method? I've seen it. I've heard about it. Let's talk about it in the messages. What do you say? Good, man? So I got there, and one of the first things that logically they were planning on doing with us was going to downtown Mexico City. So where we would grab any type of transportation to get downtown, because Mexico City's traffic is crazy, guys. It's kind of crazy, and it's a dangerous city. It's not considered one of these calm cities that everything is beautiful and they go, oh. No, Mexico City is dangerous. So we went with my cousin, her husband, her kids, and my brother downtown Mexico City. And we went to a thing called the Zócalo. Zócalo is the main square. Main square. Pay attention to the vocabulary that I'm using. Main square. And that Zócalo, or the main square, it's a big place. I think it's the biggest that I've seen in my life. And there's some very important historic buildings around it. And it's quite interesting because behind one of those buildings, there is also ruins to one of the Aztec cities, or there's ruins to what was supposed to be one pyramid, or like an old city that was built. I don't remember quite well. Some of the details will fly off of my head, but bear with me, okay? Be patient. So carrying on. We went there to the Zócalo, and it was so big, and I remember it was scorching hot. It was one of those hot days in Mexico City, and it's a city that has a lot of pollution in the air, so the heat, you can feel it a little bit stronger. Being there, we went to some museums where I'm not going to be facing details here about the museums that I used to visit or that I visited there, because it's not the most interesting experience in the world. Just went to see some paintings. But I'll talk to you in some further detail, one specific part, one neighborhood of the city that we went. So we were there standing in Mexico City. By the way, the food is amazing. The type of food that we eat here right now, where we get to a restaurant, it says Tex-Mex food or Mexican food, is nowhere near. It's totally different to the type of food that they eat. They eat things that are not related to that. We had something called the Chilaquiles. If you look for it in Saint Google, you'll find pictures, and it's a very different thing. We ate the regular, or the traditional, the customary tortillas. They're made of pure corn, and these tortillas, what it was, one of the things that I was very shocked with the culture, not shocked, but in a positive way, I found it amazing was that you get the tortilla with your hand, and there's the food on the bowl there, and then you grab the food with your hand and the tortilla and you eat it. You roll it and you eat it. And it's not like we receive already the taco already prepared and stuff, right? So that was quite of an interesting experience, because logically I had eaten tacos and I had eaten tortillas and these things in my life, but it was all Tex-Mex. It's Texan and Mexican food. Kind of crazy stuff. It exists and you will see it. Look for it, Chilaquiles. But I'll get more to the food part in some minutes. So we went to Zócalo, and then they told me, okay, let's ride the subway, because in Colombia the only city with a subway is Medellin, and I had never been to the subway, or in a subway. And it's kind of the typical touristic thing that we do, you know. It's like, okay, let's go and ride on the subway. And it was like, okay, let's go. So yes, Esteban has the type of picture that everybody in the world has, that is like asking for the subway, you know. If I was able to show you pictures, I would show you here, but it would be an amazing thing. So I do have those pictures. We rode the subway, and crazy as it seems, it was not like a very different experience for me. I was like, okay, I'm in a subway and it's okay, let's go. Finishing with the subway, then we just got in the car again and drove off. Later on, it was getting darker, and we saw a statue called the Angel of something. But let me tell you something. This statue was a very beautiful touristic site, because since it was already dark, they had put some lighting in it. So it had beautiful blue lights, and in the avenue you can see the statue over here in front and the avenue all the way in the back. So it's a very beautiful sightseeing stuff. So sightseeing in Mexico City is very nice, because you have different types of landscapes, you have different types of positions, things that you will be able to do. The next day, we drove off to one of the neighborhoods called Coyoacán, I think. Coyoacán. Let me just double check the name. Yes, Coyoacán. Coyoacán, it's quite interesting because it's a neighborhood full of street fairs. And the street fairs are little kind of tents where people put their products and they sell them. I have seen a couple of them here in Brazil, but there it's quite typical. And that neighborhood had something very special. The amount of culture in that neighborhood was a lot. There we found a museum called La Casa Azul. And La Casa Azul is a museum, or it's the house where Frida Kahlo was, or it was like Frida Kahlo's house. And she's a very important artist to the Mexican culture. She and her husband, Diego Rivera. So we saw that, and we saw some of the objects and some of the art that she had done, and it was quite interesting. I don't know why, but I had this good sensation, good feeling when I was in that house. And I remember part of the things that they showed us, that it's like, man, they show you a bed where they say, yeah, Frida Kahlo used to sleep here. And it's like, wow, oh. Yeah, respectful, but nice, very nice. So it was kind of an interesting thing. And in that same neighborhood, as we were walking around the street fairs, we knew about a news that one of the greatest writers in Colombia had died. His name was Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So we saw some of the headlines, and people were super sad because he used to love Mexico and he would visit Mexico. And coincidentally, he visited that specific neighborhood where we were, Coyoacán, because he was a fan of whatever we had there. And in that neighborhood, we had some street snacks called esquites. And they're kind of a corn thing. I don't know how to explain that to you, actually. It's like they give you corn in a cup, and then you eat it. And the best ones that I ate are in Querétaro. That is another city that I'm going to talk to you about as well. So that was basically the visit to Mexico City. My brother, he's a huge soccer fan, and he took me to see the stadium. And when I saw the stadium, like he was, wow, look at this stadium, it's so gigantic, the Mexico City Stadium. I was like, okay, this is the least interesting thing I could do in Mexico because I don't like soccer. So the many of the touristic sites, we went to cultural sites, we went to gastronomic sites, and we also went to other types of touristic sites in that city. The means of transportation we used were subway, we used a cab, and we also used a car that was my cousin's car, so that would not make any much sense, right? During that stay in Mexico City, we went to a city called Querétaro. Querétaro was kind of interesting because her husband, my cousin's husband, he had a construction site in Querétaro. And all the way there, we had a 4-hour drive. It's northwest it's northwest actually from Mexico City. And when we arrived there, he was telling us that all the architecture in the city is predominantly thought to be like a planned city, and they mirrored their city in the American cities like Miami or Houston, whatever. They have huge spaces. So we went from having these enclosed spaces and a lot of buildings and a lot of houses in Mexico City to a place where there was a lot of space, the roads were huge, shopping malls were huge, and all these things. It was a very hot city indeed. And what we did in that city was just visiting his construction site, and we went to a museum. I don't remember, Agenda something museum, and we came back. So we visited that northwest city but close to Mexico City. The next day we went to Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan is in the northeast of Mexico City. And in the northeast you will find, that's one of the things called the Pyramid of the Sun. It's a city with many pyramids, and one of the pyramids stands out. That pyramid was amazing because the touristic guide was telling us all the stories and all the history and traditions that you used to have in this pyramid, and explaining to us the pyramid of the moon, the pyramid of the sun, and all the rest of them, the remains of those pyramids. So you walked around the touristic site grabbing a lot of pictures, but the sights were amazing. The landscapes were beautiful because you're on top of a pyramid taking pictures of everything around you. The history was very interesting, quite interesting indeed. So if one day you have the chance to visit Mexico, I would recommend you highly going to that part. All right, I'm gonna pause 1 second and remind you that this listening exercise is for you to pay attention how the language sounds, and not necessarily to the information that I'm talking about. You don't need to learn anything about my trip to Mexico. You just need to pay attention to the type of words that I use, expressions, time tenses, and so on. All right? Going on, I already talked to you about Mexico City. I talked to you about Querétaro. I talked to you about Teotihuacan with the citrus. That's the picture that you will see after in the thumb, and pyramids, and the Pyramid of the Sun specifically. And after that, we went to my brother's city. My brother's city is located where he used to live, is located South Mexico City. That city is called Cuernavaca. There's actually nothing good to do in Cuernavaca. It's a regular city, But his college was there, so we went there and we stayed for 3 days, I think. I'm not sure. We stayed there for 3 days, but the best thing I did was getting to know the culture of the people in Cuernavaca. Because since I was there, my brother lived there, I was able to go and get to know the college, get to know the places where he worked and the places where he was studying. And I got to know the people he would hang out with, and I would also go to the restaurants that local people went. So if you go to a restaurant that is not touristic side, you will live actually the culture. So I started living the real Mexican culture with my brother's friends, the games they played, the food they ate, the snacks they ate, and the junk food they ate, which is very different from the type of junk food, Mexican junk food that we see around when we hear or we see about Mexican food. It was an amazing experience, and we also went downtown Cuernavaca to visit some specific places, some stores that you could find there. However, as I told you, it was not like this wow place. It was just a regular city, but it was important for us to visit it because, well, that's the city where my brother used to live, and well, it's good. But there was one very interesting thing that really caught my attention from Mexico City, from Mexico, in fact, and everything regarding their tourism, at least in that region. It's called the magical towns. The magical towns. They have a series of towns or villages that they are known for some specific thing, and they are called the magical towns, or they decided to name it like that. And we had the opportunity to go to two of those magical towns. One of them was Tasco. Tasco, it was approximately 2 hours and a half by bus from Cuernavaca, and it's in the northwest Cuernavaca. So we went by bus, we got a bus ticket, then with the bus ticket we just hopped on the bus and we just drove off to Cuernavaca, to Tasco. There in Tasco, it's a beautiful city, and the most interesting thing that caught my attention was that it's a city that's located like in the mountain. So it's a steep city. The streets are all steep, they're very small, and they're all stone, made out of stone. The thing that is that in that city that is known as the Silver City of Mexico. So silver over there is actually one of the biggest traditions in that part of the country. Silver and tequila. We went to many silver many places that you arrived, you would find silver stores. But that silver has a very interesting characteristic, and it is that if you buy silver, there is a law in Mexico that doesn't allow you buying silver 100%. Nothing can be 100% silver. However, things can be 0.9250, 92.5% silver. So it means that 92.5% of silver and the rest is alloys and other metals. So we bought some souvenirs there. We got some souvenirs to take to our family and to our friends there. Well, my brother to send to the family and friends, and I would take them to my family and my friends. And these souvenirs were amazing because silver from that part of Mexico is very famous. It's called Tasco. So one of the most important things that we did during the trip was getting to know that city. And in the same city, we went to special places where they used to do their own tequila. So we met the people who actually produced the tequila, and they had like not museums, but they have these spaces where they tell you what they do and how they do it. And one specific tequila standed out, and it's the type of tequila that is called mezcal. Mezcal is the tequila that has a small worm in it. So you're gonna drink the tequila and there's a worm swimming in it, like and they tell you that you have to drink the worm after you finish off the tequila. So I still have some souvenirs from there, and between those souvenirs, there's one small bottle of mezcal tequila that I will never drink it actually, and there's another small bottle of mezcal tequila that I think I'll never drink it as well. But those are very beautiful souvenirs. In fact, one of the things that I didn't tell you is that during the trip I gathered some souvenirs from all over the city. So in every city I would get something to take with me and to keep with me as a treasure, as a record. One of the things that I had done is this. It's a book that has all the pictures that I took during. Look at this beautiful man. This is the Pyramid of the Sun. Okay, I'm not gonna be showing you pure pictures. Look, that's me, that's my little cousin, that's my idiot brother. I love him. But well, I'm not gonna be showing you, but look at this. Look at the type of art that you can find there. It says, Bienvenido a mi casa. Bienvenido, mi casa es su casa. So I found this. I think it was one of the houses in Coyoacán. So continuing, I'm gonna carry on. We went there, and in Tasco we stayed all day long, and we came back to Cuernavaca because we didn't want to stay there for the night, because you actually go see what's need to be seen and then you come back. Then the next day we went to another place, to another magical town, but this one is nearer to Cuernavaca. It was only 30 minutes by bus, and this one was in the southeast of Cuernavaca. And the name is, oh, no, it's not southeast. It was on the east of Cuernavaca. And when you look for it, it's called Tepoztlan. Tepoztlan is a reference to the magical town because they say, the culture says that Quetzalcoatl, that's the god snake of Mexico, was born there. And when you arrive there, this is a very small town. Like, you will imagine, it's a very small, beautiful town. When we arrived there, there was a gigantic street fair. They were mounting this gigantic street fair. And my brother told me, this town is specifically famous for all the variety of ice creams that you can eat in it. So the variety in flavors. There were many crazy flavors of ice cream, so we tried a lot of crazy different flavors. I don't remember right now which of them, because actually when I came to Brazil, I noticed that here you can find a place that has like 60 different types of flavors of ice cream. So I was like, okay, that is a lot of ice cream. But anyway, in that time, 2014, I had not come to Brazil yet, and for me it was very interesting. And there in the city, we went to one specific place where they showed us in the mountain, like that is the place where Quetzalcoatl was born and so on. So we had these guided tours during the cities, during the trip, and we had a lot of people helping us, always giving us directions to where the most important or most famous touristic sites were located, so that we would not get lost. We didn't stay in any type of hotel because my brother used to live in Cuernavaca, so we used to sleep in Cuernavaca. And when we went to Mexico City, my cousin, since she lived there, we would stay in her house. Then we also went back to Cuernavaca for some days, and that was my specific moment or a specific time where I had to go back home. So basically, rounding up all the trip to Mexico, we got different types of transportation means. I traveled by plane to Mexico using JetBlue, where I had onboard flight, onboard snacks. We didn't have any layovers. In the check-in counter, everybody was super fun, super kind, especially also during the flight and so on. In my trip to Mexico, I visited the most famous touristic sites, museums, and places that you could visit in Mexico City, Teotihuacan, Querétaro, Taxco, and Tepoztlan, and Cuernavaca. That's where that's the place where my brother used to live, and so on. All right, my friends. So this listening practice was made for you to pay attention to the language that I use and not necessarily to the information that I use. So many of the things that I said probably are not in the order that I did them or things like that, but they are done, or they are said, or they are communicated in a way that you can practice your listening skills. All right, my friend. And that's it for our listening practice today. If you have any friend that you know who's studying English, send him this link, and I know that you guys will be able to practice using this travel vocabulary, especially with the past tense, because I was talking about 2014.